Welcome back to Disenfranchised. I am your host, Travis Gearhart. I am here with Keith. Oh, sorry. We'll let you do the.
Keith Cunningham.
And we are Disenfranchised.
Disenfranchised.
So our half-week guest today is Mike. How do you pronounce it? Saliba or Saliba? Saliba. Okay. So we got Mike Saliba. He is actually not from the region. He is from Detroit, which is I don't know. I feel like it's just the region. It's just in Michigan. Yeah, it's the same type of area. You know, blue collar, Rust Belt. You know, kind of area. And he is a Libertarian candidate for Congress. And so I met Mike on a bunch of the Libertarian message boards, and we started talking, and I asked him to come on the show, and he graciously said, you know, I suppose. So that was So Mike, welcome. Thank you so much. If you want to, you know, give us just kind of the, you know, the 10,000-foot view on you and your thoughts and what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I first became aware of the Libertarian Party back when Newsmax was still just a blog, and they had presidential candidate coverage for 5 different parties during the 2000 presidential election. I'm like, 5 parties? So I actually took the time to look through all the parties, all the candidates, and I got really stuck on Harry Brown, who was the 96 and 2000 presidential candidate for the LP. And he actually had a infomercial out at the time, and that really got me sold. I started going door to door with Nolan quizzes after hooking up with one of the local Libertarian candidates with that. And then from there, I really I would always just call myself a Libertarian, but didn't get too involved in the party outside of just voting for Libertarians. But then obviously Ron Paul happened in 2008. And then that, you know, seeing it on national TV was something else. And I had learned all the names of all the previous Libertarian presidential candidates up to that point. And I'm like, Ron Paul, that name sounds familiar. And I went back and checked my list. There he was, 1988. I'm like, oh, he's a Libertarian, but he's running as a Republican. That's a cool idea. And then he got treated like absolute garbage by the Republican Party. And again in 2012. And I had already been aware of Gary Johnson through, you know, some of the stuff he had done as governor of New Mexico, specifically for cannabis legalization, prison reform, and just, you know, such. And I was always like, I wonder if we could get Gary Johnson to join the Libertarian Party. And he got up on stage for the 2012 Republican primary. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Maybe I do like Republicans. We got 2 Libertarians in this debate. They let Gary talk like twice. And then after that, he joined the Libertarian Party. And I fell in love with him and Judge Jim Gray. And from then on, I was full on Republican Party, or full on Libertarian Party. Never gave the Republican Party a second chance, except for that weird slip. And I have a lifetime membership. I founded and chair my local affiliate. I was elected state chair of the Michigan State Party. I've been in 6 different elections. I've run for everything from township trustee to United States Congress. I served on my township's historical commission. One of the trustees referred to me as that Libertarian.
So you won already. That's it.
Yeah. I'm one of the only Michigan Libertarians to ever win a primary, because we only had one primary year, and just still chugging along. In 2022, I beat the margin of victory, between winner and loser in my congressional race. In 2024, my congressional race got a late endorsement from David Stockman, who served as budget director under Ronald Reagan. And so I'm hoping to carry both of those into 2026. We have another midterm year where we're not going to have an incumbent, which was the scenario in 2022. Losing track of these elections. And so I hope I can do both, get some good endorsements, beat the margin of victory, keep the winner below 50%, because I think that's the biggest way to, other than winning the election, the best way to affect the election is to make somebody lose and make them realize they have to steal your votes next time around. So,
Well, well, and I wouldn't even mind seeing at some point, one of the things that I've argued for in the case of doing third and fourth parties, Libertarian, Green Party, because obviously, me and Keith's background, we both came from the Republican Party, and so you've got this two-party monopoly. One of the things that, like you said, if you can keep it below 50%, you can make an argument where you can come back and say, because there are parts of both the country and overseas where you have to reach a certain percentage of margin victory or else you automatically start a recount, right?
mhm.
So to me, you start creating some numbers, you start putting some issues in, and you start making it obvious that there is not a consensus, then you can start making the argument that you should start changing the way that this is counted. And I think that that's a fair thing, just looking at what we've seen with the elections. I mean, other than presidential years, my candidate that I'm running for. So this is my first time running as a libertarian. I became
Cool.
very, that's the whole point of this show, is that why it's called Disenfranchised, is that Keith and I, if you haven't gotten a chance to listen to some of our early podcasts, I mean, early is in like December. We just started this thing up. So, yeah, we're only a couple months old. But I used to do a podcast when I was in my early 20s, and it was called Matters of Opinion. And for the region, it was right at the onset of all the podcasting. I'll be 40 this year, so that tells you how long ago it was. And that was a fairly big show, for the region, at least for the Northwest Indiana, Chicagoland kind of area. Um, as far as right wing kind of political stuff goes. And so that's why Keith and I started this whole thing up. And so with me running, if you look at I'm running for state rep. The Republican that is running, if you look at the actual number of voters, the number of voters was only like 41% of all registered voters actually showed up.
Mhm.
So when I talk to people and they're like, well, are you trying to steal away more of the Republican votes from where you used to be, or more Democrats because you are a little more, now that you're running as a big L libertarian? And I said, I don't give a shit about the R's and the D's. I want people under 40. I want to go out there and I want to snag these first time voters, these people that are disenfranchised, the people that are just done with
Disenfranchised.
it. Yeah, like I want the other statistic that just came out in Fox News the other day, and I don't watch it. I just follow it on Facebook so I can see what the boomers are thinking. Is that 44% of the country at this point is non-affiliated with either party, either major party. Well, that's a lot of votes for people like you and I to pick up. So so
I don't
that's
remember if it was people under 40 or people under 30, but now it's over 60% of younger but adult people uh, are dissatisfied, actively dissatisfied with both parties at this point.
yeah.
And, uh, we didn't start the country with just Republicans and Democrats. We've had a lot of other parties too, and it can change.
Yep. Yeah,
Yep.
the Whigs. We're actually talking about that on this past Sunday show a little bit. There've been a number of Whigs, Bull Moose. There've been a bunch of stuff, and I think we're ripe for it. I really do. Well, I'll shut up and I'll let Keith hop in here, because
All
I,
right, then.
I tend to be the guy that just keeps on talking. I'm in sales. I can't help it.
Tell us about the district that you live in. All I've heard is you live in Detroit. Me and Travis went to Detroit one time for a Detroit Lions Cowboys game, so we don't know the area, but we've been there.
Yeah,
What area are you
we
running in?
survived.
Yeah, we survived. I thought the Lions field was awesome. Ford Field was amazing.
Oh, it
But
was an awesome stadium.
tell us about the area you're running in, and what you're all about. What are you running on?
It's Michigan's 10th. It is a very purple district, obviously. Like I said, this district has only existed for the last 2 cycles because we had a anti-gerrymandering law get passed. And just the way this one came down is very split down the middle. You got a lot of suburbs that are either made up of the auto workers, and then you got your sort of higher end suburbs that are like auto executives, and you got the combination in between or the second generation from that. Everybody has a little bit of a tie. If not, they work for the auto industry. It's like, okay, but my grandpa did, and then, or this company started to serve the auto industry, but now it does something else. There's a lot of auto industry still.
It's like the steel workers for our area. No, same general idea.
And the county that we're in is Macomb County. Picked every president from Reagan to Trump.
That's cool.
Every election, there's always some CNN or Fox News person in Macomb County to see how it's going because Macomb County picks them. And a lot of where I live, the old district was the same Democrat family controlled it for like 25, 30 years, and they moved on. The Levins, we had Sandy Levin was the one brother that was the congressman, but his brother was the senator that co-wrote NDAA 2012. A lot of libertarians know the NDAA 2012 because that had the black sites in it and everything, and he added to it. So he's that kind of old South Democrat. But now it's kind of just fresh. We've had the same congressman for 2 cycles, but he wants to run for governor, so we're back to no incumbents. And that's why I'm hoping to pick up where I was 2022 again. A lot of people here like to go up north and hunt, so guns are a good issue for us here. Real middle of the road stuff still works here. You're not seeing very much, both parties. We used to have, 2 liberal parties. The Republicans and Democrats on a worldwide scale are both liberal parties, but the Democrats are going more towards leftism and the Republicans are going further right. So middle of the road liberalism. And I consider libertarianism an ultra liberalism. I don't consider it middle of the road either, but dissatisfied voters do exist here. You do have a lot of former Reagan voters in the older ages, and a lot of we're kind of credited for inventing the blue dog Democrats in Macomb County. So it's that mixed bag. It's that very purple district.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like a Midwest. I'm sorry, Keith. Go ahead.
How's the economy going around there now? Is it steady or slowing down?
I'd say, yeah, out here in the suburbs, you're still, grocery prices are probably the biggest economic impact you're hearing about. Home values seem to be staying steady, but a lot of people in this area got underwater real quick back during the 08 crash that I know personally. And other than that, it's sort of steady. It's that, again, it's just sort of middle of the road, middle class. So it's not too, bad yet, but I don't see it staying that way for long. I think we are getting a little bit closer to like an 08.
Yeah, I've actually just been waiting for it, man. I've been waiting to open up. Yeah, I don't know if you subscribe to Unusual Whales. You should check it out. So Unusual Whales is a site. It's they're the guys that it's the same people that did that are the ones that came up with like the Nancy Pelosi stock trading stuff. Okay. So and then they came up with the reverse Kramer. I don't know if you know about that one. So they basically took the invert of everything that Kramer says, and then that is actually like something like 18% higher than what Kramer actually says is doing the opposite. So it's kind of funny. But yeah, those guys, they do it's just kind of a daily news blurb. I follow it on Facebook, TikTok, excuse me. a couple other things, and yeah, they just kind of just general information, and it's stuff that you don't necessarily see everywhere else. You know, they were one of the first ones to talk about homeowners first time homeownership being up to 40 years old now. Like, that was the first time I saw that information. It
Yeah.
was about a week or two later that I saw some of the major news networks picking it up. So yeah, unusual whales I've really liked, as far as being just better information more readily put out there. But they, you know, they really have been on it with the economy, and you know, basically we're kind of just waiting to see when this AI bubble bursts, because that's everything. You know, they said something a lot that, like, you know, 2/3 of the economy is just all of these AI companies just trading back and forth to each other,
Yeah.
services and goods and monies, and all the rest of us are just kind of stagnant. You know, like I'm in the steel industry. You know, I'm in sales in the steel industry, so I, you know, I'm seeing it. I mean, everybody, nobody's really, steel production's up. I also go into a lot of cement plants. Cement production's up. You know, I don't want to say that it isn't. It is, but it's not nearly as up as what, you know, like we'll say the Trump administration says. I mean,
Yeah.
they're, you know, according to them, it's the best job market that we've ever had. But boy, there's just so many indicators out there that of just, you know, I don't know. Again, I'm sure you're seeing all the same stuff I'm seeing.
Yeah,
So
the dollar hit its lowest point compared to the Swiss franc in the history of ever.
yeah.
But the dollar keeps falling. Obviously, we saw gold and silver skyrocket, which really just means the dollar's going down.
Mhm.
And if there's all this foreign investment in the United States that Trump's talking about, the dollar should be going up, because when you invest in the United States, you spend dollars, and when you want to spend dollars, it means you got to buy dollars with your currency to spend it
Yeah.
now. And nobody's buying dollars right now.
Yeah.
It's not. So yeah, I'm keeping clenched. I used to work in the mortgage industry, and the company I worked for, we have the number one and number two mortgage providers or originators in the country in Metro Detroit, almost becoming our second industry. But the one that I worked for, in the time I worked there, went up from 3,000 employees to 11,000 employees, and then back down to 4,000 employees post COVID. And you know, we know interest rates haven't settled or gone down at all. So the mortgage industry has, so many people I know are connected to the mortgage industry, and nobody has great things to say about it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. We actually have a somebody we're going to interview at some point, sometime sooner than later. That does a lot of with the mortgage industry, talking about some of the 50-year mortgage stuff. Um, you know,
You'll
it's
own
it's
nothing and you'll love it.
That's what I was about to say. You'll own absolutely nothing, and you'll be happy. It's just, you know, and on the other side, you know, like Keith said, you know, I don't want to take the words out of his mouth, but Keith said basically, fuck it, I'm gonna die before I do a 30-year one anyways. I might as
Yeah,
well do a
I'm gonna
50.
die
What's the
before I do a
difference?
30, so let me stretch it to a 50.
Yeah, you know, so
But
it's
I'm
kind of
sure when you
like,
stretch it to a 50, they jack the interest rate up, and it's,
oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
same thing as a 30.
Yeah. Yeah, so
But
it's a but
I
anyways,
was
go ahead,
checking
Keith, I'm
out
sorry.
your web page, the Vote Saliba, saying your name right,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Votesaliba.com.
VoteSaliba.com.
I see that you are a fair tax guy, HR 25. Do you think the
Yeah.
I was gonna ask,
I'll let you finish before I
the
answer it.
do you think the proposed 23% sales tax is sufficient to fund current federal spending?
Not to fund current federal spending, but we're not funding current federal spending right now anyways. We have growing deficits year after year.
True.
Just something I want to point out. Uh I've never voted for a Democrat in my entire life, but when it comes to signing a budget with a deficit lower than the year before, Biden was 3 for 4. Trump is so far 0 for 5. We just keep on racking up the deficits. But where the 23% comes from is that's what you would have to have it at to keep federal revenue at the same levels, because you're never really going to get a Democrat, or not Democrat. Well, yeah, a Democrat or Republican Congress to cut revenue. You got to keep giving the Congress critters their treats. And that's the thing about my whole campaign is I am also pretty radical. I have a lot of radical, and I have a lot of like hardcore libertarian views. You know, I have a lot of libertarians that say, "Oh, the fair tax, there's no such thing as fair theft." But you know, I would very much love to end the income tax and replace it with nothing. But politics is the art of compromise, and I'm also a politician. And the reason why I really love the fair tax and a lot of the other things I run on is, while I have very radical views, I focus mostly on bills that already exist and have already been put forward in the House. So, you know, it's not some pie in the sky, just libertarian dream, but there's actually Republicans and Democrats in Congress who have thought about these stuff and have gone along with it. And so even if I don't win, you can still call up whoever does win and say, I want you to co-sign on this bill, whether it be the Fair Tax, Balanced Budget Act, Gold Standard Restoration Act, stuff like that already exists. So at least my campaign can promote it. And at least, like I said, whoever loses the election this year is going to want to steal some Mike Saliba votes in the future, and maybe they do it by co-signing the fair tax, getting on board with balanced budgets, and gold standard restoration, anything that, you know, like that can steal Mike Saliba votes. If it gets done in Congress and I don't have to get a crappy government job to get it done, all the better. But yeah, the fair tax would work out great. One thing that I'm going to be hammering hard on this campaign is if we just reverted back to the pre 9/11 budget, we wouldn't have any debt. Not only would the 23% fair tax pay for the entire budget, we would have a surplus.
Help, probably pre-COVID budget.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing.
Close. I mean,
you know, I haven't run that number. On 9/11, I did a post. I'm like, well, the pre 9/11 budget, because our fiscal year ends in September, anyways, 2001. Before it all, you know, the spending went out the window because 9/11 happened. I mean,
right.
You know, I'm very anti-war, but even I think we should have gone after Al Qaeda, if not, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's 100. I mean, we could do a 5-hour show on that. I mean, my God, I actually was driving back from my work trip yesterday, because we were supposed to do this interview yesterday, and I was driving back and I actually listened to about half of the. I made my son listen to about half of the Scott Horton, Lex Friedman 10-hour interview on the clean break memo, all that stuff. So I usually punt when it comes to foreign policy and just say, listen to the libertarians that know way more about it than I do.
Yeah, I think Gary Johnson's answer, which was all we had to do was dismantle Al Qaeda, and we got that taken care of in the first 7 months. But then we still occupied Afghanistan for 20 years and Iraq for 20 years. We didn't need to do any of that. I'm against all that. But yeah, just back to that budget. You could even cut our current taxes in half and still have a surplus. And we didn't live in caves in 2001. We still had the internet. We still had universities. We still, you know, had an army. You know, it's not like this imaginary world of 2001. I know as we get further away from it, we're old guys and young people don't remember, but, you know, some fresh out of college people don't remember, you know, the far off year of 2001, but a lot of us older folks still do. And we know it wasn't, you know, it wasn't the Wild West living in 2001. I think we could manage with a 2001 style budget. And that's by the way, when I say we could readopt the 2001 budget and have a surplus, that's adjusted for inflation. That's not the old numbers. That's the new numbers adjusted for inflation. And spending was still low enough back then. And so it's not impossible. Would I like us to cut way more? Yeah, I'd like to go back to a 1901 budget, but like I said, politics is compromise. And a 2001 budget it does the trick.
Yeah.
Well, I read both the fair tax books, and I'm a fair tax fan.
Mhm.
I feel like the main reason I haven't really like made it like an official, like look, if it pops up and I have any ability to support and do whatever with it, then absolutely, because I'm with you. All that's the same stuff that I agree with. My thing was always that I did feel like politically I didn't I had a hard time seeing a world where I feel like we would almost have an easier time saying, all right, let's dismantle it, than to say, all right, let's make a consumption tax. Essentially, I know there's more to it than just a consumption tax, but that's the bare bones of it, right? I do feel like it would be hard, but again, I think that it would work better than what we got now. I mean, I would be happy with the fair tax, a flat tax. I mean, anything that's going to make it where we're actually not getting fleeced every time we turn around. It's the spending is really the biggest part about it. And when you've got people, you've got the very rare people like Thomas Massey and Rand Paul, obviously,
Yeah.
that will vote against some of these omnibus bills and whatnots. But for the most part, it's just line up, file rank, press one for yay. Everybody shows up. They go back to their $1 million mansions and they go
But-
about with their lives. And it's
Well,
it's
that's actually a good point. And another question I got for you, with how Thomas Massey and Rand Paul, they're voting, but they don't really have a coalition voting with them. How do you plan to build a coalition in Congress to advance your priorities?
I mean, I think if I got to Congress and I'm the only one, I just kind of have to go along with it. I don't know how many compromises there are to be made. As
That,
far as
that's a tough question
every once in a
because
while I got to walk over to Democrats and say, I'll vote for you on this one, but they're going to say like, yeah, but could you vote
well,
on this, and vice versa with the
the question I was asking was it was about building coalitions in Congress to advance your priorities. Now, and when you cut out, me and Travis were talking, and he said, "Well, you go ahead. You said if you
yeah, I told
won."
him, I said that was actually a pretty, I'm like, I actually appreciate that question because I've kind of thought the same thing, running as for state rep. Obviously it's a little different, Congress, state rep, but same general idea, right? And I was like, man, I'm like, I wonder, who I would, and I was like, really, it would actually be really fun because you would be kind of beholden to no one, right?
Mhm.
So if there's a tax bill coming up and you want to side more with Republicans, well, you go on over there. All right, well, if you're in Indiana, at least, all right, we're legalizing marijuana. Well, I'm coming over here to the Democrats. Like which is really kind of how it should be anyways, right? The founders and the creators of how this is supposed to work, we basically all operate under this party system where you do, what the top down is, kind of that whole shit rolls downhill kind of idea. And so it really, it makes more sense to operate in the way that, let's say, a Rand Paul and a Thomas Massey, and not just saying that because they identify as loose libertarians. But yeah, that's kind of how you're supposed to be beholden to your people. That's the point.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. You actually did half my answer for me. Is I can certainly see where I would be going back and forth and just voting with the other two parties, and I'm not sure what I would have to compel them to join me in anything in particular. Um, because I think a lot of that kind of deal making is like, okay, we'll support you on this, but you have to support us on this. And chances are I'm not going to want to support them on no matter which party is. Chances are whatever they're going to ask me to support in exchange is something I'm not going to want to support. So it would probably just be me going back and forth as I see fit, voting no a whole heck of a lot. that is one of the things why I make the fair tax my number one was for a long time it was a bipartisan bill. For its first year after being introduced, it was split down the middle, 50-50 Republican and Democrat support. It was only after Nancy Pelosi put out a memo to the Democrats, they weren't allowed to support it anymore. Like you said, top down, Nancy Pelosi put the kibosh on that, but Nancy's not the speaker anymore. She's not the majority leader anymore, and she's not going to be in Congress for much longer. So actually, the main people I would be trying to convince to join in on the fair tax would be Democrats, because I think I got a lot of things to sell the Democrats on. I've said before in interviews, I guarantee I could convince AOC to support the fair.
I was about to say that, like an AOC, a Ro Khanna, like I do feel like some of those people that are on that, in that, what do they call themselves? The squad.
Yeah.
I do feel like a lot of the squad is much more in line with a libertarian, base. I mean, look, Ro Khanna, partnered up with Thomas Massey on the Epstein files. I mean, that was huge.
Yeah.
Has been huge.
I will say this: if I get elected to Congress with the budget I'm going to have for this campaign, that means a whole lot of libertarians around the country are going to get into Congress too, because something weird happened this year. But it's really easy to see where a Congress that's 10-15% libertarian becomes a libertarian Congress, because you're going to get the libertarians to go with you if you're a Democrat or a Republican on, all the fiscal issues. The Republicans will probably have the libertarians. All the social issues, the Democrats will probably have the libertarians. But on everything else, anything not, if the libertarians sit out and the Republicans and Democrats can't get along because they don't do that, even though combined they form a supermajority, they hate each other too much to combine, that really the 10 or 15% libertarians could be really calling the shots in that type of scenario.
Well, imagine a 10 or 15% libertarian, and then imagine on the left a 10 or 15% like socialist party, right? Because we've had a couple of people that have identified themselves as social democratics, whatever they call themselves, but they've used that word. I could see the way that because and I'm sure you've listened to this quote as much as I have. I really like Dave Smith's kind of quip about, no matter who you vote for president, once they get in there, you get John McCain.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. Obama, John McCain. Hillary, John McCain. Biden, John McCain. You always get John McCain. You get moderate tax policy, you get more spending, and you get more wars every time. So I could see a world where, even let's call it 10%. You got 10% on the far left, and you got 10%. So you would have almost a peace coalition of the libertarians and the socialists being able to say, and then you would have the Democrats and the Republicans that would be, the neoconservatives and the war coalition, so to speak. And then we would partner on fiscal bills. Like, I could see that being a much more balanced government. I think it would be better than what we have going on now.
And to your point,
is it perfect? No, but
if there is a third, fourth party situation coming from that end of the spectrum too, if you take a look at my website, I have Mike's Core 4 issues, and those are straight up hijacked from Ron Paul's 4 points that he came out with in 2008. I had to update some of them to include new bad laws and new foreign conflicts. But the thing he did with that is he got almost all the third-party candidates to sign off of that, including Ralph Nader, who was running as an independent that year, and then Cynthia McKinney, who was the Green Party candidate that year. And Cynthia McKinney is sort of the Green Party's Justin Amash. She had already served 10 years in Congress as a Democrat and then joined the Green Party when she got fed up for it. So that does show, coming even from like the Green Party and the left-leaning independents, you did have a coalition around these 4 points, and they are in fact, pretty libertarian. I think if you had your 10% Republican Congress, or not Republican, I keep saying, sorry, they're in the news the most. The
Right. Yeah, they got all
and
the
your
power.
10%
So
Greens, well, between Greens and Libertarians, you're not getting any support for, the empire of bases, a new, 55 billion
$1.5 trillion spending
fighter jet,
on the defense
yeah,
budget.
um, or just massive bank bailouts, which gonna need again.
It's gonna
And
happen. In fact, I just saw your post from a couple years ago about when the bubble. When I was pulling it up, you had a post in here. Of course, now it's gone, but you had talked about when this next bubble bursts, we shouldn't be bailing out any of these guys, and we
yeah,
will. It'll happen. It'll be an emergency type situation, and
Too big
that's
to
kind of
fail.
what we're running. What's that? I'm sorry.
Too big to fail. That was what they
Always
said.
too big to fail.
yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what the business is. Uh,
yeah.
everybody, it's the whole argument that and we've made this argument on this show quite a bit, but the whole argument that when people are talk about the way that things are going, and you have more of like the far left that kind of call it late stage capitalism, right? And I'm like, we haven't had capitalism, like real
Yeah.
capitalism, in a very long time. We have this corporatist abortion that we call capitalism. But at the end of the day, everything is pushed by the government in one way or another through government funds. Everything is bailed out. You don't have, hardly any aspect of any of the economy whatsoever that doesn't have the government's fingers on it. Uh, I don't, how do you fix that? How do you fix it? I would hope that my hope is that with this year, the way that the Republican Party has just really shat the bed, after the way that the Democrats did for 4 years. I mean, we basically just had a back to back to back, and I'll give Trump's first term a little bit of leeway. I gave his first term a lot of leeway because he spent most of it dealing with all the Russiagate hoax crap, which that's what it turned out to be. And even when it all first started happening, I was kind of like, and I was still kind of in the Republican camp at that point, but I was kind of 1 foot out, 1 foot in. I was never a Trump guy. Um, and I kind of, when all of this first started happening, I was like, I don't know. This seems odd. I just don't, and then more information came out. We get, Elon buys Twitter. We find out about that, all of that stuff. And so then you had 4 years of Biden auto penning, not, having dementia. And now we're a year into this, and I'm just like, at, at a certain point, you have to wonder when you're going to have people that are, if there's going to be a time in history, like I really do feel like we're reaching a point, and that's why I joined the big L libertarians. Like I always considered myself a smaller L, Ron Paul-esque libertarian. I was a little bit more of a hawk in my 20s. I kind of bought into the Iraq war shit. Unfortunately, I look back on it now, and I'll eat crow. I'll eat all the crow in the world. I was wrong.
Yeah. Well, you're
I
my
was
age,
wrong.
and everybody our age had a knee-jerk reaction to 9/11. You
Yeah.
know, you,
Well, the worst we'd seen was, oh, well, Bill Clinton got a blowjob in the Oval
Yeah.
Office, right? Like because Keith's in the same, I mean, I was a sophomore in high school when 9/11 happened, taking the I-STEPS test. Keith you were probably a senior at that time.
Yes, junior, senior.
Yeah, you were probably a senior. Keith's a couple years older than me, so I know you said you're kind of in the same.
I turned in my draft card on a Friday, and the following Tuesday, somebody flew airplanes into buildings. So
Talk about bad timing.
So you were born, what, 83?
January 84, but they had me turn it in early. It was weird. I was 17, but I signed it so they could keep it until I was 18.
Yeah, I'm February
It's
'84.
because they knew it was coming.
Yeah.
Because they knew it was coming. They knew.
Nobody from the Chippewa Valley School District was in that building that day, my friends.
They said Saliba. Saliba. Is that Jewish? I'm just joking. I'm kidding. But it was it's crazy, man. It was a crazy time, and I really did. I bought it all hook, line, and sinker. And I was, I eat crow now, and I look back on it and I'm like, oh God, I can't believe that I was just happy to root for all of it. And it doesn't look like we've learned our lesson. I mean, I'm still waiting for it to pop up for us to be starting to bomb Iran again.
Yeah.
Uh, I guess Keith, you had another so I guess the other aspect of it, with it being kind of in Detroit and Michigan, obviously more of a swing state. You Michigan's, I go to Michigan. I actually live fairly close to Michigan, obviously on the southwest side. I'm right, northwest Indiana. So with that, being a libertarian Michigan, do you feel like that area? I know you said that you can kind of go back and forth both sides. I do feel like every time I go up there, it is so much more of a libertarian feel, right? Because obviously you got legal weed. Obviously you guys have done a really good job, at least from what I've seen, of not just paving over every plot of land you have and making a parking lot, right? And that's where where I kind of my question kind of comes from, is that what if that wasn't going to be the case, where else do you think that you could see yourself kind of running and moving? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, obviously Michigan's home, but
Yeah.
do you think that that's kind of where your your action is, or or do you see yourself moving around a little bit to do something else in that respect?
Yeah, I have I lived a year in New Mexico when I was younger. I actually lived in Adam Kokesh's district when he was still a Republican, when Adam Kokesh was in the Republican primary. I lived in that district. And then yeah, other than that, I don't think about it much. Like I said, I used to be in the mortgage industry, and every time I wrote a mortgage in Georgia, I was just astounded by the size of the houses for the price, even compared to
Right.
Michigan. And Michigan's, it's not Beverly Hills. Um, and so actually just last night, me and my wife we were on Zillow looking at Georgia houses, but I don't know if I could ever really pull the trigger. You know, even like,
I think I might still have an outstanding ticket down in Georgia. I got pulled over years and years ago, and I don't remember if I paid it or not. I might not be able to even be in this state. I don't know.
and incidentally, where I live in Clinton Township, Michigan, an acre of vacant land here and an acre of vacant land on the Big Island of Hawaii is the same. So every once in a while, I Walter Mitty about, I'm just going to get my land on the Big Island. The reason why it's so cheap on the Big Island, though, is because you can't get homeowners insurance because volcanoes. So you just got to go.
Oh,
You got to get your
really?
acres on the Big Island where nobody actually lives, and you got to build your off the grid house in the woods and be prepared to let it get sucked in by a volcano one day. But if you build like you know, a foam dome like I want to build, or just something off the grid treehouse village, go for it, bro.
You're
What's the land in the Big
preaching,
Island?
man. You're preaching. That's what's on the docket. Like, so I'm not married yet. I'll probably end up marrying this one. She's all right. She's we've been together about 4 years, and and my kids are both teenagers. Once they graduate, so we're renting currently in the area, but the long term is I want to disappear into the woods, and I want to find myself. It doesn't have to be a lot of acreage, a couple acres, few acres, whatever, out in the woods. If I could make it be next to a river, that's even better. And I just want to build a small place out there. My uncle actually did it right outside of the Ozarks in
Oh,
Missouri.
wow.
And Missouri's kind of on my list of possible future places because it's kind of the same deal. It's kind of a purple state. It was blue for the longest time. It's recently went red. They have legal weed, which isn't for me isn't the big thing. Like I don't smoke a lot. Oh, I'm in Indiana, so technically I don't smoke at all.
Yeah, no.
But but it's not a make or break thing for me. I'm almost 40. I don't really get super fucked up all that often. Like I'm drinking a beer. We're pretty easygoing guys here. It's not in case you haven't noticed on this show, we don't we're not trying to we're not trying to be Charlie Rose over
Yeah.
here. But we, so it's not the end of the deal, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a factor. I mean, it's not even the fact that I'd have to do it. I appreciate a state that is forward thinking enough to legalize it. Cause that's like one of my main points, for my state rep seat, right? Is to legalize weed, which Indiana's, the glaring hole in the middle of the Midwest of non-legalized states, and just how much money Michigan has brought in and Illinois has brought in on the other side. And over here, they're talking about building more and making more roads, toll roads.
Yeah.
And, there's such an easy way to solve that problem.
Yeah. No, it's been a factor in some of our thinking. Even vacations.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, Keith, I've just been rattling. I know you had a couple of other,
I was just looking through your core 4 issues. Just I was curious about privacy. Out of them, out of them 4, I mean, I like all 4 of them, but I think privacy, now with how bad social media is, I think privacy is a huge one.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say about it? You'd
Yeah,
like to pass or like to change?
it's not even just social media. I mean, social media is like a voluntary invasion of your own privacy. But, for so much of the history of the internet, it was just sort of untouched. And it's only within like the last several, like 2, 3, 4 years that you're really the government openly talking about monitoring and regulating the internet. I mean, I'm sure there's been surveillance for a long time. Going back to like, if you're like me, you knew about like Echelon in the 90s and the big golf ball sized servers or the golf ball shaped servers and all that kind of stuff. But the way government is getting real into it, like you guys brought up earlier, what we found out when Elon bought Twitter, the manipulation of it, it's you at least have to keep the government out of it. And after you get the government out of it, I mean, one of the problems that I was having just now is, your platform here wanted me to use Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome as my browser, and I don't like using Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome because to me those are evil, blood-sucking, devil-worshipping corporations who are going to do all kinds of things with my data. But I'm on Brave as a browser right now, and I'm on a Linux PC. Maybe that's why I keep freezing up. But there are,
well, ever since you switched over, it's been fine.
What it is this was it's a physical problem with the Wi-Fi in this computer, not a software problem. I don't think so. I bought a new computer, but I bought a desktop, so it didn't have a built-in webcam. So I'm like, oh crap, I got to use the laptop tonight. But there are options available. I mean, like I said, you can, but when with the government is the thing that you can't get around as well. And when they start talking about banning VPNs, when they're actively trying to manipulate social media, I mean, the people who care about it will decentralize. The people who care about it will go open source. The people who don't care will be fine to click their user agreement, and it's up for grabs. But you got to let people have that choice too. But it's really when the government does it, because they're the people who can throw you in jail. That's what we have to stop. And that was, I mean, so much of it's so weird that you asked that question, because I've been kind of taking a deep dive into like early computing, early internet stuff. And so much of the promise of the internet was this wide open, unregulated, Wild West thing. The Web 1.0 was just whatever. And now I am starting to, I'm not as well versed into a lot of like the decentralized open source stuff yet, but that's why I'm getting into it. There's, now you can set up through like CB radio bands, decentralized communication webs and everything like that. And so it will, like, it always finds a way, but the government shouldn't be driving that towards us. We should be choosing to do that whether we want to or not. And but once it starts to regulate the internet, it's just so insidious. When I was like in 7th grade, I read Ender's Game. That's a space sci-fi novel, and the movie.
I read that one. I like that one.
The subplot that gets left out of the movie is that the brother and sister manipulate society by becoming social media influencers before there was social media. I mean, he wrote that thing in the 70s. And even when I was reading it in the 90s, it wasn't quite real yet. And now you read it and you're just like, they became social media influencers who divided the population into two to fight each other and disrupted society. That's a whole subplot to that book. So I mean, it can happen. We're watching it happen. I mean, I'm way into politics, but I feel like there's so many people who really ought not be into politics because they just treat it as a team sport and they want their team to win, but they're not really focused on the issues. I mean,
there's no critical thinking in that group, like I fully enjoy doing this show with Keith, not just because we have a good time and it gives us a chance to get together and drink beer and talk about politics and eat meat and talk to interesting people like yourself. But sometimes there's ideas that don't come out unless you're in the middle of talking to it. There have been several times that Keith and I'll be on a show and all of a sudden that rat gets moving and you, before you know it, you're on a point and you're like, oh my God, I didn't even really think about this until I'm in the mid. Like if you're not having to, and this harkens back to the days where Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and all the, they were all meeting at the bars and talking about ideas. And that's, back in the Greek and Roman times, they would get together and they would have ideas. And I enjoy that. I enjoy having the free exchange of ideas. I mean, we had a Democrat on last week, and he was a younger guy, and it was a great interview, and we actually had a really nice time because it was just a good conversation, and it wasn't because we weren't super entrenched in our party, and we weren't trying to ask him gotcha questions, and we weren't trying to make him look like an asshole. We were trying to just have a nice talk, like
honestly,
we were just having a good.
When I pull up your core 4 issues, the only reason I lean towards the privacy portion of it is foreign policy. We must initiate the return of our soldiers. I've been hearing that my whole life. It's nothing against you, but I've heard that my whole life. National debt, no, I heard that my whole life. Federal Reserve, heard that too. I think privacy, the privacy portion of your 4 issues is something that can actually get done.
Yeah,
The other
and
3 I just blocked.
we're finding out how people are reacting to armed agents of the states knocking on the doors and saying papers, please.
Right. I was actually going to bring that up. That was one of my kind of like towards the end questions. I know that you've been super hot and heavy about the ICE stuff. I've been watching you, and so I kind of wanted to, when we got towards the end, which we're getting close to an hour. I've got all night. I'll talk for the next 5 hours. Me and Keith's got to get up and go to work. I'm in sales. I can make my own schedule. But you guys, I have all the time in the world. So you have the floor. Like by all means. Me and Keith have talked a little bit about ICE. I don't feel like we're too far off from where you're at, but I want to give you an opportunity to really flush that out, because I know that's something you're also very passionate about.
Yeah. And like I said before, I have very radical libertarian beliefs and principles, but I'm a politician. I'm running for political office, and politics is the art of compromise. I think there's a lot of compromise available to us in terms of the actual border. But people are conflating ICE with the border. I'd say we really stopped having open borders in 1914, but ICE didn't come around until 2003. So whenever you say abolish ICE, people jump to open borders, and in my heart, I'm open borders, but from a pragmatic point of view, that's not necessarily what I'm saying. I'm just saying, let's just go back to the way it was in 2003, because something else we touched upon earlier is there were knee-jerk reactions to 9/11, and ICE became part of that. And so much of the fear-mongering and scapegoating really obfuscates what it means to have a border with and without ICE, and what ICE is actually for. Well, they're getting all the pedos and the rapists and the murderers. No, the people who arrest pedos, rapists, and murderers are called police, and we've had those for a long time.
Right.
ICE is
FBI.
Yeah, ICE is something very specific. They're not for arresting murderers or seeking out murderers. We haven't heard of anybody getting charged with murder after being arrested by ICE. There aren't all these millions of people lining up for their murder trials, but they're just getting sent back to wherever they're from, or sometimes now where they're not from. But it's a kind of law enforcement agency that wasn't well thought out. They're not well trained. They don't really have what, at least under Kristi Noem, seems to be clear, decisive tactics. Somebody the other day was just posting like, well, Bill Clinton deported 12 million people. I'm like, yeah, and he did it without ICE. So, and he did it without shooting clergy members in the face with pepper balls. And he did it without sweeping entire neighborhoods. And he did it without emptying entire apartment buildings on Halloween night when kids are supposed to be trick-or-treating. He didn't murder 2 people in the streets. And we're really seeing what undertrained, they operate. I mean, they're dressed up like they're military. And we've all heard the expression, you dress for the job you want. Well, ICE dresses like stormtroopers invading a city. And our founders warned us against standing armies. This is turning on the people. I mean, this is, as soon as the deployments started, because before the election, I said, well, Donald Trump's trying to recreate the Nixon shock. And then after the deployment started, I said, well, now he's trying to recreate the Boston Massacre, because that's what's going to happen eventually. I mean, months before the recent shootings, I was saying, someone's going to die. At one point, said to somebody, what's going to happen if I die in one of these ICE standoffs? But it just shows, the Department of Homeland Security, I don't even think needs to exist. ICE falls under it. There's real law enforcement options. Prior to 1996, even if you were an immigrant and you got arrested for something, unless you were convicted of a felony, you didn't get deported. You didn't need to get deported. And if you want to get sold on open borders and the morality of it, hop on YouTube and watch any number of Jacob Hornberger's like hour-long videos on the subjects. And from a morality standpoint, he'll sell you on straight up open borders. But just even getting back to what I hear most often, door knocking, because, you know, for a third party candidate, door knocking is the most effective thing you can do with the least amount of money. And I hear all the time, I don't mind immigration. I just want them to do it legally like my ancestors did. And nobody takes the time to understand the difference in the conditions your ancestors, my ancestors immigrated here with, and what's available to people who want to immigrate here now. And as libertarians, we draw a lot of comparisons to alcohol prohibition, particularly when we're talking about the drug war. And that's an easy comparison to make because it's, you know, mind-altering substances being outlawed. But I really like in the immigration situation to alcohol prohibition. You know, alcohol has been a part of human society going back to the advent of agriculture. It's something people are used to doing. It's some people get hung up about it, and obviously there was a moral panic about it to cause alcohol prohibition, if you discount the Rockefellers and the invention of gasoline. But what happened once alcohol became illegal, people didn't have a problem breaking that law because they knew they were really only hurting themselves. And it was something that was just normal. It was normal to just be able to buy alcohol. And they ended up turning to illegal alcohol. They went to bootleggers who had to do bad things to get the alcohol into the country from elsewhere, or they went to moonshiners who made it themselves and made it poorly. You know,
That's why they all went blind.
yeah, if you don't know how to make your cuts on any grain-based alcohol, you're going to get methanol, you're going to go blind. If you run your still through a radiator, you're going to get Jake leg. But people just didn't mind. But as the only way you got people to stop buying alcohol from bootleggers and moonshiners was put it back in the stores. And when they put it back in the stores, they actually it was tighter than it was before. But people were happy to do it. They were happy to pay the alcohol tax, quite frankly, and it just became a better scenario. There were legal ways to get alcohol during Prohibition. You could get a prescription for whiskey. You could get a religious exemption. You were allowed to, I think, do a gallon of wine a month, of homemade wine per member of the family, even if that member of the family was a child. You know, there were.
And didn't they have like near beers too?
Yeah.
Didn't they have like a very, very low alcohols where you had to drink 30 of them, but you know, you could do it.
And so you could say to, and by the way, a lot of rich people just bought as much alcohol as they could before Prohibition started, and they had alcohol all through Prohibition. And so you could walk up to those people buying rot gut whiskey from a moonshiner and say, why don't you just do it legally? I used to buy whiskey legally. You're not understanding what the red tape to get it is. And that's how we are now. When just, you know, very recently in our history, it was much easier to immigrate. And in the lifetime of our parents and grandparents, it was much, much easier to immigrate. And then through all of human history, it was like nothing. We did have open borders through most of human history. You think in the Middle Ages, there's anybody stopping you from, you know, walking from England to Scotland? I mean, it was just land. It was just imaginary lines. So
Well, and to jump, I don't mean to interrupt, but the other thing that, you know, again, talking about having conversations, you know, it really does go hand in hand with the fair tax, and because then you wouldn't have to worry about any other, because that's usually the biggest question, and I'm not, I'm not quite in the open border camp. I'll be honest with you. I do think that you have to have some sort of borders for what that's just where I'm at. I'm also not in the let's militarize them and go and I do think that the way that ICE is happening, I actually lean more in the direction of I felt like it was almost done on purpose, because I don't think that Trump actually wants to ship all these people back. I think most of his donors, they want the cheap labor, and so I think that this is a show of force, and maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe I'm putting on my tinfoil conspiracy hat here, but I really do think that this is just kind of him doing lip service and hiring a bunch of kids, doing a really shitty job at it for the first year, and so that then the rest of the time you can say, "Oh, we tried. Sorry,
Yeah.
guys. All right, we're gonna take it off the table." But real quick, and I'll give it back, the floor back to you to go on that. But it really does make sense then to go with a fair tax, like a consumption tax, because then you're taking that argument out. Like, people are like, oh, well, they're not paying their fair amount of taxes, and that's that's fair. Like, you're not if you're an illegal immigrant, you're making pennies on the dollars, but you're not contributing to a system, right?
Yeah, but
So
if you
if
want
the
to
system is based
slow
on
the flow, well, if you want to slow the flow of immigration, you don't need to worry about ICE running around like the Gestapo. You need to stop offering the welfare programs to them. If they're going to come
yes,
over and they want to work and they want to get a job and work, I don't have a problem with that. We should offer up an easier way for them to become a citizen, to assimilate to this country. But the ones that are coming over here for their free housing, free food, free cell phones, all that free bullshit, eliminate that crap, because I'm sick and tired of paying for it.
yeah.
And go ahead, go fair tax too. You want to come over here and work, work on your visa or whatever, you can go ahead and pay the tax too. But I think
Yeah.
you eliminate the welfare programs, the social safety net that we paid into and is supposed to provide for Americans, and yet it's being fucking drained on people that are coming over here by the millions.
We have so many great points. So first one I'm going
Yes.
to
So
is that
yes. Sorry.
I even let myself get off my own point, which the point I started making was getting rid of ICE isn't getting rid of the border. And I still got myself onto open borders. But
But that's good.
yeah,
That's why we do
yeah.
this, man. This is why we love
So
it. So go
to
ahead.
the point about the fair tax, we never actually explained the fair tax to the audience, which is now the
Sure.
fair tax is a 23% consumption tax on new goods and services, but you're never really going to pay that full 23% in taxes, because if you are here legally with a social security number or a visa number, you get a prebate check at the beginning of every month for you and all the members of your household that equates to 23% of poverty level spending. So if you're just spending at the poverty level, your tax rate is 0. If you're if you're spending at double the poverty rate, half of what you spend is untaxed by that prebate, and half of what you spend is taxed at that 23%. But cut that in half, what's half of 23%? 11.5%, right? Yeah. So your
Yeah.
tax rate is
Something
only
like that.
11.5. Yeah. And it keeps going up like that.
I'll take my shoes off.
Yeah,
Hold on. Yeah.
the more and more you spend, the higher your rate gets. Unless you're here illegally, then you're not getting that prebate check. So you're paying 23% from day one. So you're actually incentivized to go ahead and get yourself documented. Because right now, advantage to being undocumented is staying off the grid to not pay taxes. But if taxes are paid at the cash register, you want to get on the grid to get your prebate at least. So that's where the fair tax can really help with that. That also helps with, Tony Soprano's not claiming all of his income on his tax returns, but he is going to the store to buy big screen TVs and Escalades, and he's going to pay the fair tax too. So it really puts criminals onto the tax rolls as well. And then as far as
it basically
welfare state,
spreads the burden.
yeah,
It spreads the burden,
Yes.
so there's no loopholes for, your criminals to get
Yes.
out of it.
yeah, right now, if you want to avoid paying taxes, you form a corporation, you get tax attorneys, and you do all kinds of weird spending as business expenses and avoid taxes under the fair tax. If you want to avoid taxes, you shop at the thrift store and do your own chores. So I think it really helps change who gets to avoid taxes. Going back to, just getting here legally, making it easier. The one plan that I really like, and it's not mine originally, but I'll roll with it, is every United States embassy in the world just becomes a job application center. You go to your local U.S. embassy if you want to come immigrate to the United States. You hop on a computer, you take an online job interview from some employer. I don't know if it's a construction firm or a bank. It doesn't matter, whatever you're good at, who needs people and are looking for employees anywhere. Get the job, come over, don't have any government assistance for up to 10 years. Don't get arrested for up to 10 years. And at that 10-year mark, bam, you're a citizen. You've been paying in, you haven't been taking, you've been working, bam, you're a citizen. And that's not open borders, but I think
No, not
it's
at
very
all.
reasonable.
Honestly, I'd almost cut that in
Yeah.
half, if I'm being honest with you. Like I would think that 5 years would be a pretty good, but that's just, my knee jerk reaction. I'm sure somebody did a lot more math with how much, it costs to import a person and all that
Yeah.
shit. So,
And then
but
with the welfare state, if you looked at the news now, or if you looked at social media now, you would think welfare solely exists for illegal immigrants. But the one thing I'd like to point out is if you're worried about abuse of the welfare system and you deport every foreign-born person in this country, whether they're here illegally or legally, you're still leaving 300 million natural-born native citizens to abuse the welfare state. And so that is where we do have to start rolling back the welfare state. And it is where you have to, if you want to get to that balanced budget, or introduce sound money to cut off the easy money supply, you have to start making sacrifices. And what we learned during like the 10 minutes Doge was a thing is once people start getting money from the government, they don't want to get it up. So rolling
Yep.
back the welfare state, we know is going to be harder than probably even the most cynical of us thought it would be, because people will fight tooth and nail to keep it. And so
we saw it.
what we have to do is at least, this is where I think a gold standard restoration, and there's lots of ways to do a gold standard that don't even involve the government owning gold. But as long as the money supply was limited, that you just can't go to the Federal Reserve and say, oh yeah, we need an extra $2 trillion this year. The budget, if it has to be balanced, it forces the budget to be balanced, or if you have a balanced budget amendment or something. But at least you have to start dealing with those things in real terms and start saying, okay, we just can't get rid of food stamps, but maybe we can get rid of food stamps for some of these upper level food stamp people. Or maybe we could keep food stamps, but we're not going to fund another triple supersonic stealth jet that still can't win a dogfight against an F-16. Or maybe we'll close some bases in Germany and Japan that, let's face it, they've been on good behavior for the last 70 years. At least start making those compromises to, the welfare state is well-intentioned, but, you can't keep paying for things you don't have the money to pay for. And so we really got to knock out a lot of the welfare state. And by the way, I haven't checked the statistic lately, but I heard probably from Ron Paul, I think that is like for every $1 that goes to social welfare, somewhere is really $10 going to corporate welfare too. And
Oh, without a doubt.
that's just
Without a
another thing
doubt.
to get a functioning market. We got to stop. We have to let real capitalism work.
Well, we're not gonna have a choice pretty
Yeah.
soon. That's my biggest argument is that eventually these chickens are gonna come
Yeah.
home to roost, so to speak. You know why I believe in a libertarian government because at the end of the day, this is what's you're going to have sooner than later,
Yeah.
probably, because sooner than later, all of this is gonna crumble, and you're going to have to be able to trade, freely with your
Yeah.
neighbors and be able to sustain yourself so a couple of things like you said there with the, I absolutely there I don't think anybody has an argument against a safety net, right? But the argument is how big does that safety net get to a point where you do have the welfare state and we're in very similar areas, right? We're in Northwest Indiana, we're in the so-called armpit of America, you're over there in Detroit, it's a very poverty-stricken area. There's a lot of people that are in rough, are in a rough place. You don't want to take away that, but you also know you run into the same people that we run into around here, where you're like, oh, you're just really gaming the system, right?
Yeah.
And and again, I don't want to assume anybody is that, and I, again, being a libertarian, I understand gaming the system because that's what it's there for, right? You're there. If that's the rules, then play by the rules, right? If you're doing it against it, I would prefer that those weren't the rules, but then we should rewrite them. And I think we're in for a big rewrite sooner than later, whether the Republicans, Democrats want it or not. You're gonna have to, because eventually you're gonna have those debts coming to due. So, like you said though about closing bases and all that, the biggest thing, if you look, and I'm sure you know the same thing I do, is that if you look at the British Empire, you look at the Roman Empire, they stretch themselves so thin, they stretch the resources so thin that eventually they can't afford to exist. And most of those places lasted about 250 years. Well, what are we celebrating next year
Yeah.
or this year?
Yeah. This year now.
250. Yeah, this year now.
Yeah.
So
It's almost ominous at this point.
it is. It's kind of creepy, and then couple that in with all the Epstein shit. I mean, there's a lot of different stuff, going on all kind of at the same time that, you know, I I do try to be on the positive side with it. I know it's not easy. We have plenty of times that Keith and I do this show and we're black pilled and we're talking about everything, going to pot. But I do think that people like you running, and me running, Keith. I'm sure Keith's gonna, he'll get back in it. He actually just got out of it, so he's happy to be taking a break. Yeah, he's sitting there like, fuck you, Travis. But yeah, he was in it longer than I was, on the school board level. But I think that having people really pushing it and really pushing that message, I think that that's important. I think that's what's going to hopefully make a difference. And I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of
It was
crazy.
always going to take some sort of radical change for a shift in the two-party system, but we're now living through pretty radical times. You know what? It didn't shift the two-party system, say, back in the '60s, but you know, it's those late '60s hippies who helped form the Libertarian Party in the first place. So, it's
Yeah.
the anti war people. It's the you know Murray Rothbard always referred to the formation of American libertarianism as the merger of the old right and the new left. The new left is already not the current left anymore. They're old now, but the new left was the hippies and the old right was the free marketers, free marketers
Yeah.
plus hippies equals libertarian, and I think we could do it. You see that those kinds of radical movements rise up during these times. So
Mm.
you know,
Yeah. Well, a lot more of the Pat Buchanan
yeah,
types, less of the George Bush, and more of the Pat Buchanan. Obviously, Ron Paul. I mean, he's he's the OG. He's the the walks on water, type deal. Which I feel bad because back in the day, I didn't want to be and I told this story before. I didn't want to be a Ron Paul guy because all of my buddies that were Ron Paul guys were fucking assholes. Like, they were just smug. They were like, "Oh, you're not a part of the revolution? Oh, okay." And I get it now. I do understand it because they were really keyed on to something that took me a little bit longer because I did agree with him. Like I read his End the Fed book. I read the Ron Paul Revolution. I've got his book sitting on my bookshelf. I read all of his stuff and I agreed 100% with everything he wrote. But I was still like, I would be splitting hairs and be like, well, he really focuses on pork for his district. And it's like, well, yeah, he had to focus on pork for his district because why wouldn't he? Everybody else is going to the trough. It would be irresponsible of him to be in Congress and not go to the trough for it. Plus, he's voting no on everything else. He's got to have something for his people to actually elect him into office for. So then it just took a little bit longer for me to, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink type deal.
Yeah, and I don't know how many of your old Ron Paul friends you still talk to, but it was kind of like a bummer to find out so many of them were actually just looking for the craziest person in the room. And then as soon as Donald Trump became the craziest person in the room with a completely opposite set of principles or lack thereof,
He talked a good game with the whole drain the swamp
yeah,
stuff.
I mean, all
And then he
sounded
created Doge with Elon. I was for about half a second, I was like, when he first got elected, I was like, this might actually be really cool. Who was the guy that he actually pardoned and released from prison?
Snowden.
Yeah.
No, not Snowden.
Yeah. No, that's Snowden. I
Sullivan.
was like, wait. Yes. Like he followed up on that real quick. Like I was like, okay. And then it didn't take long.
Yeah. I was very kind to Trump, as kind as I can be to a sitting politician of any kind, for like the first 3.5 years. I think Trump's first term didn't do very much damage on policy, but I always used to say, even during the time, it was doing damage to the American psyche. And now I think the sort of embrace of extreme statism is part of the damage to the American psyche that we're seeing now. Policy wise, he never got much done during the first term. So I always said Barack Obama was still a worse president than he was, as far as actual policy. But just the attitude, it is just an F you, F everybody but my team attitude that has really become very unhealthy for the American body politic. And
Yeah.
I was rooting for Biden to win, not because I've ever liked a single thing about Biden. I've hated Biden as long as I've known who Biden was. But I wanted the Republicans to learn that Trumpism was a losing pitch. And I knew 11% inflation was coming for whoever was president. I wanted Joe Biden to get the blame for it, which he did. The inflation under Biden was Trump's fault, but I wanted him to take the fall for it because I wanted Trump to be a one-termer. Then I wanted Biden to be a one-termer. And I wanted to get at least the Republicans back on track because there was like a real sort of civil war brewing in the GOP pre-Trump that was the Rand Paul versus John McCain. And Rand Paul was starting to look like he was coming out the winner. And then Trump came along and he changed the whole game. And we would be much better off if he just stayed at home on his gold toilet. And that shift happened in the Republican Party to the old right instead of this shift towards, it's right-wing socialism now.
Yeah.
And they don't mind. There's list. You need your fingers and your toes to count all of the things that Republicans would have hated if a Democrat did it or said it, but Trump did it, and they like the way it makes them feel when he badmouths Rosie O'Donnell, so they're for it. It's all vibes, it's all feels now. It's not actual policy or results. And that's why I actually wish a lot of the people who are just in it for the team sport went back to not caring about politics. It's better off than, like, if what we have now is just so bad, but bad times create change.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's a good spot to finish it off. We're at about an hour and a half.
All right. Well, I think my laptop's about to
Thanks.
die permanently. So
Yes, perfect. Well, hey, Mike, thank you so much for coming on, dude. We got to do this again.
This is one of the best podcasts I've been on, so I'd love to come back. This was great.
Well, I thank you so much. We appreciate that.
Yeah. No, you're gonna have to go check out votesaliba.com, SALIBA. I've been checking out your website. I stole your sign you got up in the corner, the "You Are the Revolution." I emailed that to you, Travis. Maybe you could throw that on the podcast somewhere.
Hell yeah.
But yeah. If anybody, any of our listeners,
we'll put that up on there, and
any
we'll
of our
we
listeners get a
actually
chance,
created
check
our
it out.
own. Yeah,
250 years since the last revolution. Let's do another one. Let's do the love revolution.
Let's do it. Let's make it work, my man. Well, hey, thank you again so much. We appreciate your time. And hey, if you're in the Detroit area, vote Mike Saliba. Vote Libertarian.
Cool.
All right.
Awesome.
Peace.
Thank you.
Well, hold on. We got to close it off. We got to close it off proper. Well, I'm Travis Gearhart, and this is.
I'm Keith Cunningham.
and we are
Disenfranchised.
Disenfranchised.